Admiral Lee Ji-wan stood at the massive window of Earth's orbital command station, watching the blue planet spin slowly below. 3 years had passed since the last Velthran warship had fired its weapons at human targets. 3 long years of rebuilding cities, healing wounds, and counting the dead. The war had cost humanity dearly, but they had survived. Now, peace might finally be within reach. The message had arrived 2 days ago through official diplomatic channels. The Velthran, Empire, humanity's most feared enemy, wanted to meet. They spoke of peace treaties, trade agreements, and an end to all hostilities. The politicians on Earth were already celebrating. Finally, they said, the nightmare was over. Ji-wan touched the scar on her left temple, a reminder of the Battle of Europa Station. She had been a captain then, commanding a single cruiser against impossible odds. Now she wore the stars of an admiral, earned through blood and sacrifice. The politicians might trust the Velthrans, but Ji-wan had learned to be careful. Admiral, a voice called from behind her. Commander Park Min-ho approached with a datapad in his hands. His face looked troubled. As head of human intelligence, Min-ho rarely brought good news. What have you found? Ji-wan asked, turning away from the window. Min-ho handed her the pad. Velthran, fleet movements, ma'am. They claim these ships are just ceremonial escorts for the peace talks, but look at the numbers. Ji-wan studied the display. Red dots showed Velthran ships gathering at the edge of neutral space. There were far too many for a simple ceremony. How many? At least 200 ships and more arriving every day. They say it's to honor humanity with a grand display, but... Min-ho shook his head. Admiral, no one brings this many warships to a peace treaty. The door to the observation deck slid open. Captain Kim Do-hyun walked in, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. Do-hyun was one of humanity's most decorated officers, a man who had fought in every major battle of the war. His opinion carried weight with everyone, including Ji-wan. Captain, Ji-wan nodded. I assume Min-ho has briefed you? He has, and I don't like what I'm hearing. Do-hyun moved to stand beside them at the window. The Velthrans have never done anything without a reason. They don't waste resources on ceremonies or empty gestures. If they're moving that many ships, they have a plan. Ji-wan felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. She trusted these men. They had fought beside her, bled beside her. If they were worried, she needed to listen. There's more, Min-ho continued. Dr. Choi Yoonji has been analyzing their recent communications. She thinks they're lying. Dr. Choi Yoonji was humanity's leading expert on alien languages and behavior. During the war, her work had helped crack Velthran communication codes and predict their battle tactics. If anyone could spot deception in their words, it would be her. Get Dr. Choi up here, Ji-wan ordered. I want to hear this myself. While they waited, Ji-wan reviewed the peace proposal again. On the surface, it looked generous. The Velthrans offered to give up all disputed territories. They promised to open trade routes and share certain technologies. They even suggested joint research projects and cultural exchanges. It was everything humanity could hope for after such a terrible war. Too good to be true, Ji-wan thought. Dr. Choi Yoonji arrived 15 minutes later. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an analytical mind. She had spent years studying the enemy, learning their languages, understanding their culture. During the war, her insights had saved countless human lives. Admiral, Dr. Choi bowed, slightly. Commander Min-ho told me you wanted to discuss the Velthran communications. What have you found, Doctor? Dr. Choi activated her own datapad, showing a complex waveform analysis. The Velthran language uses specific tonal patterns to indicate truthfulness. When they speak honestly, certain frequencies appear in their voices. When they lie or mislead, those frequencies change. She highlighted sections of the waveform in red. Every single diplomatic message we've received shows the deception patterns. They're not telling us the truth about their intentions, Do-hyun cursed quietly. So this whole peace treaty is fake? Not fake, Dr. Choi corrected. But they're hiding something important. The treaty they sent us probably isn't the real one they plan to present. Or there are secret clauses we haven't seen. Jiwan felt the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. Decisions made in moments like this could save or doom millions of lives. The politicians wanted peace, so badly they were ignoring obvious warning signs. Someone had to think about what might happen if this was all a trick. "Commander Minho," she said slowly, "what's the worst-case scenario here?" Minho didn't hesitate. "They want our leadership in one place. All our top military commanders, government, officials, and diplomats will be at these peace talks. If something happened to them..." He didn't need to finish. Without leadership, humanity would be vulnerable to attack. The Valthrons could decapitate the entire human government and military, command in a single strike. "They tried to beat us in open war and failed," Do-hyun added. "But if they can remove our leaders and create chaos, they might not need to fight. They could just walk in and take over." Jiwan walked back to the window. Earth looked so peaceful. From up here, billions of people down there were hoping for an end to the fear and uncertainty of the past 3 years. They deserved peace, but they deserved to survive more. "What about Protocol 7? She asked quietly. The room fell silent. Protocol 7 had been the creation of General Nam Tae-hyung, one of humanity's greatest military minds. He had died in the final battle of the war, but not before leaving behind detailed plans for defending Earth against future threats. The plans were classified at the highest level. Only a handful of people even knew they existed. "It's ready," Minho said. "General, Nam's preparations were thorough, but activating it would mean we don't trust the peace talks," Jiwan finished. "It would mean we're preparing for war even while talking about peace." She thought about the politicians who were already making speeches about the coming peace. She thought about the media calling her generation the peacemakers. She thought about all the people who just wanted the fighting to end. Then she thought about her duty. Her job wasn't to make people happy. Her job was to protect humanity from its enemies, even when those enemies came bearing gifts and promises. "Dr. Choi," she said, "how certain are you about the deception patterns?" "Completely certain, Admiral. They're hiding something significant. Captain Do-hyun, if you were planning to trap an enemy delegation, how would you do it?" Do-hyun considered the question seriously. "I'd make the offer so attractive they couldn't refuse. I'd choose a neutral location where they felt safe. I'd bring enough force to make resistance impossible, but keep it hidden until the moment of truth, and I'd make sure all their important leaders came to the meeting." Every element he described matched the current situation perfectly. Jiwan made her decision. "Commander Minho, activate Protocol 7 immediately. Do it quietly. And tell no one outside this room. Captain Do-hyun, I want you to brief the other senior officers, but only those we absolutely trust." "What about the politicians?" Dr. Choi asked. "They'll notice military preparations. Let them notice. But don't tell them the real reason. If they ask, say it's standard security for such an important diplomatic mission." Jiwan turned back to face them. "If I'm wrong about this, I'll face the consequences. But if I'm right, and we do nothing, humanity might not get a second chance." The 3 officers nodded and prepared to leave. At the door, Do-hyun paused. "Admiral," he said, "what if they really do want peace? What if we're preparing for a war that doesn't need to happen?" Jiwan looked out at Earth one more time. "Then, we'll have wasted some time and resources preparing for nothing. But if they're planning to betray us and we're not ready," she shook her head. "I'd rather be wrong about peace than wrong about war." As her officers left to begin their preparations, Jiwan remained at the window. Soon, humanity's leaders would travel to Nexus Prime for what everyone hoped would be a historic peace conference. Ambassador Han Soo-bin was already preparing his delegation, choosing his words carefully for what might be the most important speech in human history. But in the shadows, other preparations were beginning. Ships that didn't officially exist were receiving new orders. Weapons that had never been tested in combat were being loaded onto secret transports. Soldiers who thought the war was over were quietly being told to prepare for one more battle. "General, Nam Tae-hyung had once said that the price of peace was eternal vigilance." As Jiwon watched the sun rise over Earth's horizon, she hoped he had been wrong. but she was preparing as if he had been absolutely right. The peace talks would begin in 5 days. Whatever the Valthrons were really planning, humanity would be ready. The crystal domes of Nexus Prime gleamed like jewels against the black of space. Ambassador Han Subin pressed his face to the transport ship's window, watching the neutral moon grow larger as they approached. This would be his greatest moment, the speech that would end humanity's war with the Valthran Empire forever. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Dr. Choi Yoonji, joining him at the observation port. She kept her voice calm, but Subin could see tension in her eyes. The xenobiologist had been quiet during most of the journey, spending her time reviewing Valthran cultural files. "It is," Subin agreed. "A perfect place for a new beginning." Around them, the human delegation made final preparations. Politicians checked their speeches one last time. Trade negotiators reviewed economic proposals. Military liaisons like Captain Kim Do-hyun stood quietly in their dress uniforms, trying to look ceremonial rather than functional. But Subin noticed things that worried him. Captain Kim kept checking his communication device. Major Song Hye-jin, head of their security detail, had positioned her guards in patterns that suggested they expected trouble rather than celebration. Even the ship's crew seemed more alert than normal. Ambassador, Lieutenant Yoon Jae-wha approached from the communication station. The young officer looked nervous. "We're receiving the final approach vectors from Nexus Prime Control. Everything appears normal." Subin nodded, but something in the lieutenant's tone suggested she wanted to say more. "Is there a problem, Lieutenant?" Yoon glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Sir, I've been monitoring space traffic around the moon. There are a lot more Valthran ships here than they reported. A lot more." Before Subin could respond, the transport's captain announced their final approach. Through the windows, they could see the magnificent amphitheater where the ceremony would take place. It was built into a crystal formation with transparent walls that offered spectacular views of space. Hundreds of ships surrounded the moon in what appeared to be a joint fleet formation. "Look at that," someone whispered behind them. "Valthran and human ships side by side. This really is a new beginning." But Captain Kim was frowning as he studied the formation. "Something's wrong with their positioning," he muttered to Major Song. "That's not a ceremonial arrangement, that's a tactical formation," Major Song finished quietly. "I see it too." The transport settled onto the landing platform with barely a vibration. As they disembarked, a delegation of Valthrons waited to greet them. Leading them was Overlord Krathus, the Empire's chief diplomat and one of their most powerful leaders. Krathus was tall even by Valthran standards, with the blue-gray skin and silver eyes typical of his species. He wore ceremonial robes that sparkled with embedded crystals, and his movements had the fluid grace that marked Valthran nobility. When he spoke, his voice carried the musical tones that made their language so difficult for humans to master. "Welcome, honored representatives of humanity," Krathus said in accented but clear English. "Today marks the beginning of a new age of peace and cooperation between our species." Ambassador Subin stepped forward and bowed slightly, following diplomatic protocol. "Overlord Krathus, on behalf of all humanity, I thank you for this historic opportunity. We come here with hope and good intentions." "As do we," Krathus replied. "Come, let us show you the wonders we have prepared for this momentous occasion." The human delegation was escorted through corridors carved from living crystal. The architecture was breathtaking, with light refracting through the walls in patterns that seemed to shift and dance. Valthran musicians played haunting melodies that echoed through the chambers, while their artists displayed holographic sculptures that told the story of both civilizations. Dr. Choi Yoonji walked slightly behind the main group, observing everything with a scientist's trained eye. She noticed things the others missed: the way Valthran guards positioned themselves at every intersection, the subtle tension in their body language despite their welcoming words, the fact that there seemed to be far more security than any ceremony would require. During the cultural exchange banquet, she sat next to several Valthran scientists and tried to engage them in conversation. Their responses were polite but guarded. More telling was what she observed when they thought she wasn't looking. Their movements had the controlled anticipation of predators waiting to strike. Dr. Choi, one of the Velthran scientists, asked, "What do you think of our moon? Beautiful, is it not?" "Very beautiful," she replied carefully, "though I notice the energy readings from your ships are quite high for vessels that are supposed to be in ceremonial status." The scientist's silver eyes flickered. "Ah, you are very observant. Yes, we maintain full power as a mark of respect. In our culture, to reduce power suggests weakness or disinterest." It was a smooth lie, delivered with perfect sincerity. But Dr. Choi had studied Velthran culture for years. She knew that in their tradition, reducing power was actually a sign of trust and peaceful intentions. This scientist was lying to her face. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Yoon Jae-hwa had been quietly monitoring communications from their escort ships. What she found made her blood run cold. The signals she was detecting didn't match what the Velthrans had reported. There weren't just ceremonial escorts out there. Her equipment was reading massive energy signatures consistent with fully armed battle fleets. She found Captain Kim during a brief break in the festivities. "Sir, we need to talk privately." Kim followed her to a quiet alcove. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "The ships, sir. There are hundreds more than they told us about, and they're all armed. This isn't a ceremonial fleet. This is an invasion force." Kim felt ice form in his stomach. "Are you certain?" "Completely certain, sir. Whatever this is, it's not a peace conference." At that moment, Major Song Hyejin received an encrypted message on her secure communicator. The transmission was short, but it changed everything. "The trap springs at dawn. Execute Protocol 7. The message bore Admiral Lee Ji-won's personal authorization codes. Major Song had hoped she would never see those codes used. They meant that humanity's worst fears were about to come true. She quickly gathered her security team and passed coded instructions. To any observer, it would look like routine security checks. But her people understood. They began positioning themselves for combat, preparing to protect the delegation when everything went wrong. The formal ceremony began at sunset. The great amphitheater filled with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to witness this historic moment. Cameras broadcast the event across the galaxy, showing two former enemies coming together in peace. Ambassador Subin took his place at the ceremonial table where the treaty would be signed. The document lay before him, bound in materials from both Earth and the Velthran homeworld. This was supposed to be his greatest triumph. Overlord Krathis began his speech with flowery words about eternal friendship and mutual prosperity. He spoke of trade routes that would enrich both civilizations and joint ventures that would benefit the entire galaxy. The audience applauded politely at appropriate moments. But as the speech continued, subtle changes crept into Krathis's tone. Dr. Choi Eun-ji noticed them first. The musical quality of his voice began to shift, taking on the harsh undertones that in Velthran culture indicated dominance rather than partnership. "And now," Krathis announced, "let us examine the treaty that will bind our peoples together for all time." He activated a holographic display showing the document's contents. Ambassador Subin began reading, expecting to see the generous terms they had negotiated. Instead, he found clauses that made his heart sink. The treaty didn't just end the war. It placed humanity under Velthran protection as a junior partner species. Human colonies would be administered by Velthran governors. Human military forces would be reduced to local defense only. Human trade would be regulated by the Velthran Ministry of Commerce. "This isn't what we agreed to," Subin said, his voice carrying clearly in the crystal chamber's acoustics. "Ah, but it is what you will accept," Krathis replied. His friendly mask was slipping away, revealing the predator beneath. "You see, Ambassador, you have no choice." As if responding to a signal, lights began appearing in space around Nexus Prime. Ships decloaked, revealing themselves one by one. What had seemed like a modest ceremonial fleet was actually a massive armada. Hundreds of Velthran warships surrounded the moon, their weapons charging with deadly energy. The human delegation watched in horror as more and more ships appeared. They were completely surrounded, Outnumbered by at least 50 to 1, their 3 escort cruisers looked pathetically small against the assembled might of the Valthran Empire. "You came here expecting to negotiate as equals," Krathus continued, his voice now carrying clear threat. "But you are not equals. You are a young species that got lucky in a few battles. Now you will accept your proper place in the galactic order." Captain Kim stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm. "This is an act of war, Overlord." "Is it? You came here of your own free will. You can leave the same way once you sign the treaty. Your alternative is to remain here permanently while your homeworld learns of your unfortunate fate during these negotiations." 2 days before the peace ceremony, Admiral Li Jiwan stood in the deepest levels of Earth's orbital command station. The room around her didn't officially exist. No blueprints showed its location. No personnel records listed the people who worked there. This was the heart of Protocol 7, and it had been preparing for this moment since the war ended. Fleet Captain Ryu Jisoo approached with a status report in her hands. Her uniform bore no insignia of rank or unit, nothing that could identify her if she was captured. Like everyone involved in Protocol 7, she had volunteered for a mission that might require her to disappear completely. "Admiral," Ryu said quietly, "the Phantom Fleet is in position. 240 ships, all hidden in the asteroid belt around Nexus Prime. The Valthrons have no idea we're there." Jiwan nodded, feeling the weight of command heavier than ever before. Protocol 7 was the creation of General Nam Tae-hyung, her mentor and friend who had died in the war's final battle. Before his death, he had pulled her aside with a terrible prediction. "Jiwan," he had said, "the Valthrons will never accept defeat. They'll find another way to destroy us. Something that doesn't require them to win battles they can't fight. When they do, humanity must be ready to respond." General Nam had spent his final months designing the most elaborate military deception in human history. He called it Protocol 7, after the 7 principles of warfare he had lived by. The plan was simple in concept, but devastating in execution. Make the enemy think they had won while preparing to destroy them completely. Chief Engineer Oh Min-seok entered the room carrying a sealed case. Inside were the control codes for humanity's newest weapon, something so secret that only 5 people in the entire military knew it existed. "The resonance torpedoes are loaded and ready," Oh reported. Dr. Lee Hyunwoo's team outdid themselves. These weapons should penetrate Valthron shields like they're made of paper. The resonance torpedoes were the key to the entire operation. During the war, human scientists had discovered a flaw in Valthran shield technology. The shields used harmonic frequencies to deflect incoming fire. But those same frequencies had a resonance point. Hit them at exactly the right frequency, and the shields would collapse completely. Dr. Lee Hyunwoo had spent 2 years perfecting weapons that could exploit this weakness. Each torpedo contained a quantum computer that could analyze enemy shield frequencies in real time and adjust its attack pattern accordingly. The Valthrans had never seen anything like them because they had never been used in battle. "What about the information warfare component?" Jiwan asked. Commander Park Min-ho materialized from the shadows like a ghost. As head of human intelligence, he had spent months preparing for this moment. His network of spies and analysts had been feeding false information to the Valthrons, making humanity appear weaker and more desperate than they really were. "Everything is in place, Admiral," Park reported. "Our double agents have convinced Valthran intelligence that Earth's fleet is scattered and unprepared. They think our best ships are still undergoing repairs from the war. They have no idea what we've actually been building." The deception had been masterful. While publicly announcing budget cuts to military spending, humanity had actually been constructing the largest battle fleet in their history. Ships were built in secret facilities, registered under false names, crewed by volunteers who officially didn't exist. The Valthrans thought they were facing a weakened enemy. Instead, they would encounter humanity at full strength. Captain Shin Yujin commanded the stealth carrier Soul's Vengeance, the fleet's flagship. Her ship was invisible to enemy sensors, armed with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. She had positioned herself with perfect firing solutions on every major Valthran command vessel, Captain Shin reports ready status. Ryu added, her strike squadrons are prepared to launch on your command. Jiwon walked to a holographic display showing the space around Nexus Prime. Red dots marked Velthran positions while blue dots showed hidden human forces. The enemy had superior numbers, but humanity had superior positioning. When the battle began, it would be over quickly. Colonel Bei Sunwoo entered the command center wearing full combat armor. His battalion of enhanced Marines was ready for boarding actions against Velthran ships. Each Marine carried experimental weapons designed specifically for fighting in enclosed spaces against armored enemies. My teams are loaded and ready, Admiral, Bei reported. If we need to take any ships intact, we can do it. The Marines were humanity's answer to Velthran shock troops. Enhanced with genetic modifications and equipped with powered armor, they were faster, stronger, and tougher than normal humans. During the war, a single squad of these Marines had held off an entire Velthran division. Master Chief Kwok Jiho approached with the final piece of the puzzle. His demolition teams had spent weeks planting ghost mines throughout the areas where Velthran ships would position themselves. The mines were undetectable, using quantum entanglement to receive activation signals from across the galaxy. The field is prepared, Admiral, Kwok reported. 500 ghost mines are positioned throughout their formation. When you give the word, their fleet will be sitting in the middle of the largest minefield in military history. Jiwon studied the tactical display one more time. Every element of Protocol 7 was in place. The Phantom fleet waited in perfect ambush positions. The new weapons were loaded and targeted. The information warfare campaign had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The Marines were ready for close combat. The ghost mines would create chaos in enemy formations. But there was one element that troubled her. The human delegation attending the peace talks didn't know about Protocol 7. Ambassador Han Subin and most of his team genuinely believed they were going to negotiate a peace treaty. Their honest reactions would help sell the deception to Velthran intelligence. Only the military members of the delegation knew the truth. Captain Kim Do-yeon, Major Song Hyejin, Lieutenant Yoon Jae-hwa, and a few others had been secretly briefed. They would protect the civilians when everything went wrong. Admiral, Fleet Captain Ryu said quietly, are you sure about this? If we're wrong, if the Velthrans really do want peace, we'll be starting a war that doesn't need to happen. It was the same question Captain Kim had asked days before. Jiwon had been asking it herself ever since she authorized Protocol 7. What if Dr. Choi Yoonja was wrong about the deception patterns? What if the Velthran fleet movements had innocent explanations? What if humanity was about to attack people who genuinely wanted peace? Commander Park, she said, show me the intelligence summary one more time. Park activated a holographic display showing intercepted Velthran communications. Every message shows deception patterns. They're planning to capture our leadership and force a surrender. The peace treaty is fake, designed to make us sign away our freedom voluntarily. The evidence was overwhelming. Velthran ships were positioned for combat, not ceremony. Their communications contained subtle threat indicators. Their treaty contained hidden clauses that would make humanity a vassal species. Every sign pointed to the same conclusion. This was an elaborate trap. But Jiwon also knew the cost of being wrong. If she activated Protocol 7 unnecessarily, thousands would die in a battle that didn't need to happen. The galaxy would see humanity as aggressors who betrayed a peace conference. The diplomatic consequences would last for generations. Admiral, Chief Engineer Oh said, General Nam designed Protocol 7 for exactly this situation. He knew the Velthrans would try something like this eventually. All his calculations assumed they would use deception rather than direct attack. General Nam had been the finest military mind of his generation. His tactical innovations had saved humanity during the war's darkest hours. If he believed the Velthrans would resort to treachery, Jiwon had to trust his judgment. She thought about the billions of humans who were counting on their leaders to protect them. They deserved peace, but they deserved survival more. If there was even a chance that the Velthrans were planning betrayal, she had to be ready to stop them. All stations, confirm ready status, she ordered. One by one, the reports came in. The Phantom Fleet was hidden and armed. The ghost mines were active and waiting. The Marines were loaded in their assault ships. The stealth carriers had perfect targeting solutions. The information warfare teams were ready to disrupt enemy communications. Lieutenant, Commander Jiang Minjie reported from his fighter squadron. Razor Wing Squadron ready for launch, Admiral. We've been running simulations against Velthran tactical patterns. We know how they think, and we know how to beat them. The young pilot commanded humanity's elite fighter wing. His squadron had never lost a battle, and they were eager to prove themselves against the Velthran fleet. Their ships carried the new resonance torpedoes designed to destroy enemy vessels in single hits. Captain Shin Yujin's voice crackled over the secure channel. Seoul's Vengeance reporting full readiness, Admiral. My strike squadrons are armed, with resonance torpedoes and positioned for maximum effect. On your command, we can cripple their command structure before they know we're here. Jiwan looked around the command center at the men and women who had volunteered for this mission. 3 months after the Battle of Nexus Prime, Fleet Admiral Li Jiwan stood in the same observation deck where this had all begun. But everything had changed. The view through the massive windows now showed not just Earth's orbital stations, but dozens of alien vessels flying alongside human ships. The galaxy looked very different when you were the dominant power instead of the struggling survivor. The Velthran Empire had collapsed within weeks of their defeat. News of their failed trap and devastating military loss spread quickly through their territories. Species that had been forced into the Empire for centuries saw their chance for freedom and took it. Rebellions broke out on dozens of worlds as the supposedly invincible Velthrons proved to be very beatable indeed. Ambassador Han Subin approached, carrying documents that would reshape galactic politics for generations. He had survived the I-Die trap at Nexus Prime and emerged as humanity's most skilled diplomat. Now he was about to sign treaties that would make humans the guardians of galactic peace. Admiral, he said with a slight smile, the final agreements are ready for your review. 17 former Velthron worlds have requested protection under the Terran Federation. They're offering full cooperation in exchange for our guarantee of their independence. Jiwan took the documents and reviewed them carefully. Each treaty was different, tailored to the specific needs and cultures of the species involved. But they all had one thing in common. They recognized humanity as the senior partner in galactic affairs. It was not a role humanity had sought, but it was one they had earned through strength and wisdom. The galaxy had watched as humans turned a deadly trap into crushing victory. They had seen how humanity protected its allies and showed mercy to defeated enemies. Now everyone wanted the same protection. Commander Park Min-ho joined them, his intelligence. Reports showing the continuing fallout from the Velthran defeat. His network of agents and analysts now covered half the galaxy, monitoring threats and opportunities with equal skill. The Nexus Accords are working better than we hoped, he reported. 12 other species have signed the Anti-Deception Treaty. They're agreeing to ban the use of false diplomacy and hidden military buildups. Anyone who violates the Accords faces intervention by the Terran Federation. The Nexus Accords were humanity's solution to the problem that had started this crisis. The treaty banned the use of deceptive diplomacy, required transparency in military movements, and established procedures for resolving disputes without treachery. It was named after the moon where the Velthrons had tried their great deception, now a symbol of what happened to those who broke faith with their neighbors. Dr. Choi Eun-ji entered the observation deck carrying her latest research. Her work in xenopsychology had become the foundation for the new galactic order. She had spent months studying the psychological patterns that led to conflicts like the Velthran War, developing methods to prevent them from happening again. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission is ready to begin operations, she announced. We've established offices on 47 worlds, all dedicated to understanding and preventing the causes of interspecies conflicts. The goal is to make sure we never have to fight another war like this. Her commission was revolutionary in galactic politics. Instead of simply punishing defeated enemies, it sought to understand why conflicts started and how to prevent them. Former Velthron worlds were participating voluntarily, helping to analyze the imperial system that had made their former rulers so aggressive. Captain Kim Do-hyun, now Admiral Kim, approached with news from the fleet construction yards. His promotion had come with the responsibility of integrating captured Vielthran technology with human innovation. The results were impressive. The new defensive systems are operational ahead of schedule, he reported. We've combined their shield technology with our resonance weapons to create defensive platforms that can protect entire star systems. No one will ever again be able to threaten civilian populations the way the Valthrons did. The defensive platforms were a compromise between humanity's new power and their desire for peace. Rather than building vast offensive fleets, they focused on creating shields that could protect innocent lives. Any aggressor would find their targets defended by weapons that could penetrate any known shield technology. Major Song Hyejin, now Colonel Song, commanded the new interspecies security force. Her organization combined human military expertise with alien knowledge and techniques. The force included volunteers from dozens of species, all trained to protect civilians and maintain peace. Recruitment is exceeding all expectations, she reported. We have applications from species we've never even heard of before. Everyone wants to be part of the force that protects the galaxy from another Velthran empire. The security force was humanity's answer to the question of how to maintain peace without becoming tyrants themselves. Instead of ruling through fear, they led by example, showing other species that cooperation was more effective than conquest. Fleet Admiral Jiwan walked to the observation window and looked out at the bustling space lanes around Earth. Ships from across the galaxy came here now, bringing trade, culture, and knowledge. What had once been humanity's desperate last stand had become the center of galactic civilization. A young Velthran diplomat approached nervously. His species had once been the galaxy's most feared empire, but now they were struggling refugees asking for humanity's protection. The irony was not lost on anyone. "Fleet Admiral," he said in carefully practiced English, "I bring a message from the Velthran Provisional Council. They wish to know if there is any possibility of joining the Terran Federation as a protected species." It was the question G1 had been expecting. The surviving Velthrans had nowhere else to turn. Their empire was gone, their military was destroyed, and their former subjects wanted nothing to do with them. Only humanity had the power and, perhaps, the mercy to help them rebuild. "Tell your council that we will consider their application," G1 replied diplomatically. "But they must understand that joining the Federation means accepting our values. No more deception, no more false treaties, no more attempts to dominate others through trickery." The young diplomat nodded eagerly. "They understand, Fleet Admiral. The old ways brought only disaster. We wish to learn from humanity's example." As the diplomat left, Ambassador Han Subin shook his head in amazement. 6 months ago they were trying to enslave us. Now they're begging to join our federation. How quickly things change. "Not quickly enough for some people," Commander Park added. "My intelligence reports show 3 other species planning their own versions of the Velthran trap. They think they can succeed where the Empire failed." Jiwan wasn't surprised. There would always be those who thought they could outsmart humanity, who believed that one clever plan could overcome superior preparation and determination. They would learn the same lesson the Velthrans had learned at Nexus Prime. Dr. Lee Hyunwoo joined the group, his latest research promising even more revolutionary developments. The weapons that had won the battle were just the beginning. His teams were now working on technologies that could prevent conflicts before they started. "The new detection systems can identify military buildups from across the galaxy," he explained. "Any species that starts massing ships for aggressive purposes will be detected immediately. We'll know about potential threats long before they can strike." It was the ultimate expression of the lesson learned at Nexus Prime. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared by a surprise attack. Never again would they have to rely on luck and courage to survive treachery. Master Chief Kwok Jiho, now Sergeant Major Kwok, oversaw the training of integrated human-alien marine units. His ghost mine tactics had become standard doctrine throughout. The Federation taught to every species that joined the Alliance. "The new recruits are learning fast," he reported. "Turns out most species have their own versions of human determination once you show them how to use it. We're creating the finest military force the galaxy has ever seen. and it's dedicated entirely to protecting innocent life. As the afternoon wore on, more reports came in from across the galaxy. Former Valthron colonies were establishing democratic governments. Trade routes were reopening under Federation protection. Scientific research was accelerating as species shared knowledge freely for the first time in centuries. But the most important report came from Lieutenant Commander Jiang Minjie, now Captain Jiang. His fighter squadrons patrolled the space lanes, protecting merchant vessels and refugee ships from the pirates and warlords who had emerged from the Empire's collapse. All patrol sectors are secure, he reported. No hostile contacts, no threats to civilian shipping. The galaxy feels safer than it has in decades. Fleet Admiral Jiwan nodded with satisfaction. This was what victory looked like. Not the conquest of enemies, but the protection of innocence. Not the accumulation of power, but the responsible use of strength to create peace. The memorial service for Captain Shin Yujin and her crew was held at sunset, with representatives from dozens of species attending to pay their respects. The captain who had sacrificed her ship to save millions of civilians had become a symbol of humanity's values throughout the galaxy. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds after Admiral Li Jiwan's voice echoed across all communication channels. Then space around Nexus Prime exploded into the largest naval battle since the war's end. This is Admiral Li Jiwan to all Velthran vessels. You came here expecting to find sheep. Instead, you found wolves. Captain Shin Yujin smiled grimly as her stealth carrier, Soul's Vengeance, dropped its cloak directly behind the Velthran flagship. Her ship had been invisible, positioned perfectly for this moment. Around her, dozens of other phantom vessels materialized from empty space like deadly ghosts coming to life. All squadrons launch immediately, she commanded. Target their command ships first, make every shot count. The first wave of resonance torpedoes screamed away from human launch tubes, their quantum computers already analyzing Valthran's shield frequencies. The weapons Dr. Li Hyunwoo had spent 2 years perfecting were about to face their first real test. Overlord Krathus watched in horror from the crystal amphitheater as his supposedly impregnable fleet came under attack. The first torpedoes struck his flagship's shields, and instead of deflecting harmlessly away, they punched through the energy barriers, like they weren't even there. Impossible, he breathed. Our shields are absolute. Nothing can penetrate them. But the resonance torpedoes were designed specifically to exploit the harmonic weaknesses in Valthran's shield technology. Each weapon adjusted its frequency in real time, finding the exact resonance point that would cause the shields to collapse. What had once made Valthran ships invincible now made them vulnerable. Fleet Captain Ryu Jisoo led the main battle line from her command ship, Busan's Fury. Her formation included 60 heavy cruisers, all armed with the new weapons and crewed by veterans who had fought the Velthrans before. They knew their enemy's tactics and were ready to counter them. All ships, focus fire on their command vessels, she ordered. Cripple their coordination first, then work outward. The human battle line opened fire in perfect synchronization. Hundreds of resonance torpedoes crossed space in beautiful, deadly streams of light. When they struck their targets, Valthran's shields failed completely, allowing the weapons to tear into hull metal and vital systems. Master Chief Kwak Jiho watched his trap unfold with professional satisfaction. The ghost mines he had planted throughout the Valthran formation activated simultaneously, creating a sphere of explosions that encompassed the entire enemy fleet. Ships that had felt perfectly safe suddenly found themselves in the middle of the largest minefield in military history. The mines used quantum entanglement for activation, making them impossible to detect or jam. They had been waiting patiently, for weeks, scattered throughout the space where Valthran ships would position themselves. Now they detonated in perfect sequence, turning the enemy's tactical formation into a death trap. On Nexus Prime itself, the battle took a different form. Colonel Bei Sunwoo's enhanced Marines stormed the crystal amphitheater, their powered armor allowing them to move faster than normal humans could follow. They had trained for exactly this scenario, protecting civilians in a hostile environment while fighting superior numbers. All teams converge on the delegation, Bei commanded over the tactical network. Priority 1 is getting our people to safety. Everything else is secondary. The Velthran shock troops guarding the facility were some of their empire's elite soldiers, but they had never faced enhanced human marines in close combat. The humans moved with mechanical precision, their weapons designed specifically for fighting in enclosed spaces against armored enemies. Major Song Hyejin led the VIP protection detail through the crystal corridors, fighting a running battle against waves of Velthran soldiers. Her security team had prepared for this moment, studying the facility's layout and planning escape routes. They moved like a well-oiled machine, covering each other's advance toward the landing platforms. "Stay close to me, Ambassador," she called, to Han Subin as energy bolts sparked off the crystal walls around them. "We're getting you out of here." Ambassador Subin followed numbly, still trying to understand how the peace conference had turned into a battle zone. Everything had happened so fast. One moment he was refusing to sign a fraudulent treaty. The next moment Admiral Li Jiwan's voice was declaring war, and ships were exploding in space above them. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Yoon Jae-hwa had taken control of the facility's communication center, using her knowledge of Velthran systems to disrupt their military coordination. Commander Park Min-ho's intelligence teams had prepared her for this, providing detailed maps of enemy computer networks. "Their command structure is collapsing," she reported to Major Song. "I'm jamming their tactical frequencies and inserting false orders into their communication streams. They don't know which orders are real anymore." In space, the battle raged, across multiple theaters simultaneously. Captain Kim Do-hyun commanded the escort cruiser Incheon's Pride, leading a desperate charge against the Velthran flagship. His ship was heavily outgunned, but the new weapons gave him a chance against impossible odds. "All power to forward shields," he ordered his crew. "We're going straight at them. If we can take out their flagship, the rest of their fleet will lose coordination." The Incheon's Pride accelerated toward the massive Velthran command ship, dodging return fire while launching everything in her torpedo tubes. The resonance torpedoes struck the enemy vessel's shields and penetrated them completely, causing massive explosions along the ship's hull. But the Velthran flagship was enormous, designed to survive heavy damage. It returned fire with weapons that could destroy a human cruiser in a single hit. Kim's ship shook violently as energy beams scorched her armor. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7, his first officer reported. "We're losing atmosphere." "Emergency seals," Kim ordered. "Damage control teams to all affected areas. We're not done yet." Lieutenant Commander Jang Min-jae led his fighter squadron through the chaos of the main battle, his pilots demonstrating the superior training and adaptability that made human fighters so dangerous. They flew patterns that Velthran tactical computers couldn't predict, striking weak points and disappearing before return fire could find them. "Razor Wing Squadron, form up on me," Jang commanded. "We're going after their carrier groups. Those ships are launching fighters faster than we can shoot them down." His squadron dove through a formation of Velthran destroyers, their fighters' small size allowing them to avoid the larger ship's weapons. They targeted the enemy carriers with surgical precision, their resonance torpedoes crippling the vessels, launch bays, and flight operations. The tide of battle was turning rapidly. What had begun as a Velthran trap was becoming their worst nightmare. Their shields were useless against human weapons. Their tactical formations were disrupted by ghost mine explosions. Their communications were jammed and filled with false information. Captain Shin Yujin watched from her command bridge as the enemy fleet began to break apart. "All squadrons, press the attack. Don't give them time to regroup." The Soul's Vengeance moved through the battle like a predator among prey, her advanced stealth systems allowing her to strike and vanish before return fire could find her. Her crew had trained for years for this moment, and they executed their attacks with deadly precision, but the Velthrans were not finished yet. Overlord Krathus, watching his carefully planned trap turn into a disaster, made a desperate decision. If he couldn't capture the human leadership, he would destroy them along with everyone else on Nexus Prime. "All ships, converge on the moon," he ordered. "Ram the civilian sections if necessary. If we cannot win, we will ensure they lose everything." His flagship, heavily damaged but still functional, began accelerating toward Nexus Prime's crystal domes. The ship was massive enough to shatter the moon's artificial atmosphere and kill everyone on the surface. Captain Shin Yujin saw the enemy's desperate move and made her own decision. All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We're intercepting the flagship. Her crew looked at her in shock. The Soul's vengeance was fast and deadly, but she was no match for the Velthran flagship in a direct collision. It would be suicide. Captain, her first officer said quietly, there has to be another way. There's no time, Shin replied. That ship will kill millions of civilians if it reaches the surface. Someone has to stop it. She activated the ship's intercom system. This is Captain Shin Yujin to all hands. We have one more mission to complete. It's been an honor serving with you all. The Soul's vengeance changed course, accelerating directly toward the Velthran flagship. Both ships were on a collision course with Nexus Prime, but only one would survive the impact. At the last second, Shin activated her ship's remaining torpedoes, programming them for point-blank detonation. The weapons struck the flagships damaged. Hull and exploded simultaneously, creating a massive fireball that consumed both vessels. The sacrifice worked. The Velthran flagship was destroyed before it could reach the civilian areas, its wreckage scattered harmlessly in space. But the Soul's vengeance was gone too, taking her brave crew with her. Admiral Lee Jiwan watched the explosion from her command center, feeling the loss of a good ship and better people. But there was no time to mourn. The battle was still raging, and humanity needed every advantage they could get.